The very first day there at Boeing, my manager stepped out of the team meeting to come and meet me at the gate. And then he walks me back into the team meeting. And it was 35 men and not a single woman anywhere.
Welcome to Multiple Hats, a show about STEM professionals who have gone off script and carved their own path beyond the tracks that were set for them. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine, how they found their why and what it takes to make it happen. I'm Angelique, and on this episode of Multiple Hats, I'm celebrating Cassie Leonard as a very special release for International Women's Day 2024. You see, Cassie is an aeronautical engineer with over 16 years experience at Boeing. She is the author of STEM Mom, a leadership book of STEM parents on how to create a happy life with professional success. And she has started her own consulting company and publishing business last year as ELMM Coaching and Publishing. Tune in to decipher the acronym because engineers do love acronyms, don't they? Cassie started out at Boeing as one woman in a team of 35 male engineers. Imagine how daunting it might have been to disagree in a meeting. But Cassie said she had plenty of role models in her family, one of them her aunt who ran her own engineering firm. So it didn't occur to her that engineering was not for women. And in fact, it is for women, and she had a very successful career at Boeing for 16 years. We discussed how she studied ELMM Consulting and published her book, but also how to create a supportive environment at work so that you can stretch yourself to grow with a safety net, or support network, as she put it. How to drive your own career by asking what you want, because it helps your manager to do so, and how to shift your mindset from your value being attached to your paycheck, and so much more. But let's start with Cassie, the aeronautical engineer, and why she picked this topic.
My origin story is quite oiled, actually. I'm a fourth generation female college graduate in my family. My grandma has a degree in chemistry. It just never crossed my mind that I couldn't be an engineer. Almost all my aunts and uncles were engineers, so that was just logical. Aeronautical, so the aerospace engineering passion came from wanting to go into space and design space stations and all those cool things you think about when you're 12. Then once I got to college and I started going through the courses, the curriculum at UCLA was wonderful, but it taught me really quickly that I wanted to work on things that didn't just live in orbit all day long.
So you started with space.
I started with outer space, but thankfully aerospace engineers can do either. So I figured out that like Top Gun airplanes, G-forces, all that were really cool. So I made a pivot in my senior year of college to airplanes. And that was very fun.
So what does the engineer do? What kind of topic you study exactly? And then you start being on the field, what do you do as an aeronautical engineer?
Those are two very different questions, and I love it. So the first, you study a lot of mechanical engineering things. It's very similar curriculum to mechanical engineer. So how the world works, physics, calculus, some chemistry, some material science. But mainly it's about how things interrelate, how loads travel between two forces. And then when you get into aerospace, we start adding on a lot more about fluids, because airplanes move through air, which is the fluid. You're pushing through a substance, and so that creates the lift, it creates a resistance. It's all the different interactions with an airplane and the world. And so that thermodynamics, that fluid mechanics piece of the mechanical world really sets the aerospace engineers apart.
Okay, so first thing, you said that your family had a lot of engineering degrees. And so with also many women having engineering degrees, so your grandma was a chemical engineer. Did you have other role models in the engineering space and aeronautical space?
Yeah, my grandma was chemical, and then my aunt, who's wonderful, I actually dedicated my whole book to her. Aunt Anne was and still is, a civil engineer, and she owned her own business. She ran an engineering firm. This was late 80s, early 90s, and so just that whole concept. Of course, women do this. Her husband worked in her firm for a while as an engineer. So it was just a beautiful women. They're moms and leaders and engineers, and you can do all of it. Have fun. That was the message I received.
Yeah, that's great. So we say you can't be what you can't see, but you were seeing it all. So for you didn't cross your mind that wasn't for you, which is fantastic. But then when you ended in university, how many women were around you?
Yeah, there was a shift. It was a slow shift though, because I went to a major public university with classes for your first 2 years. There's 40 to 300 people in a class. And so you're doing the classes with the people studying to be doctors and nurses and computer science. And so those have a lot more female representation. And so I was probably 35% women peers. And then it wasn't until my third year where we started really shifting into engineering specific. And I actually did study abroad my third year. So I went to England, where they have a very similar demographic, almost more of women not being in engineering. First engineering classes I took there was the first slap in the face. I sat down and there was one woman in the class with me, and I was shocked. Like 45 men and one woman and me.
Yeah, so you had to sink in at some point. And so how did that go for you? That didn't discourage you, which is great. But then how did that go? Did you try to be one of the boys, or did you just like lean into being the one woman in 40? Lots of choices.
I was still naive at that point and just, this is because I'm studying abroad. And so back in America, it's different. I just kept assuming. So for that year, I was also the other because I was a foreigner and I had the weird accent. I happened to also be a 6 foot tall woman, so I was the tall girl. I had so many things making me different that I didn't pinpoint it on the engineering piece that early in my life.
Cool. And so then after that, you graduate and you start with Boeing. So first thing, how does one land their first job with one of the biggest player in the industry?
I applied 25 times.
25 times.
That's all it takes to Boeing, to different job recs. So I needed a job. So I just kept applying everywhere and anywhere. I had a master's. I was employable, but it was really hard just to break through.
So no, when you said 25 times, you actually sent 25 cover letter and resume to Boeing.
Yeah. To different teams, different jobs.
And what was the first one that actually said yes?
Actually, a year after I accepted the job from my first interview with Boeing, I interviewed once and I got the job, so that felt really good. But I still was getting rejection letters from some of those 25 a year later. I just kept going.
I think I've applied 25 times to the same place, but I mean, that's a great tales of persistence. Don't take no for an answer, which is a great quality.
Well, thank you.
I guess you got there. Awesome. And so what did you started doing there?
Back to your previous question about when did I notice that I wasn't in the norm being a woman. My very first day there at Boeing, my manager stepped out of the team meeting to come and meet me at the gate at noon because we had a morning orientation. And then he walks me back into the team meeting, and it was 35 men and not a single woman anywhere. And I was like, oh, that was my first really big slap in the face. This is going to be different.
Yeah, quite intimidating,
Yeah.
right? So did you find your voice when you were in meeting and you were perhaps not agreeing or thought that you had something different to say?
It took a while. It took a long while to really figure out that they were looking for people to raise their hands and share perspectives, and they wanted that engagement. I was very intimidated when, like, the first few months of just, I don't know if I belong. I knew I was credible. I knew I had the background, but everything shifted when you get to industry and you're not doing the design project where you're designing the whole airplane anymore. You're doing the analysis for this bracket to start. You really scale down and you really get to the detail work, because the big picture work, you have to have years and years of industry experience. So you have to like shift your whole mindset on, I can design a whole airplane, and then you get to work and you're like, oh no, I couldn't, because there's actually so many more things going into the airplane than I ever thought possible. So it's eye-opening.
Yeah, I imagine. Good on you for persisting still. But yeah, many women relate to being the only one, but I guess 1 in 40 is quite a difficult number to go through. Were there women bathroom in the building or?
It was always empty. It's a women's bathroom that had a couch. It was lovely. You never had to wait.
Oh.
It was just always there.
At least there was one. Okay, cool. So when I look at your LinkedIn profile, for example, I see that you would have 16 years at Boeing, which is a good chunk of time to spend at one company. And that you spend the first perhaps 9 years as a structural analysis engineer. And then when I look at the pace, I can see acceleration on the cycles where you start moving every 2 to 3 years as you start taking manager position. So to my naked eye, if I don't think through, that would look like a very linear progression. But then in your book, you describe one thing where you talk about career progression in 2 dimensions. One that is stretching you from a technical perspective and one that is stretching you from leadership perspective. So what did it look like for you after those 9 years, and how does this 2 dimension work for you?
I love that you described the graphs because I love graphs. I Those 9 years were not linear in any way, shape, or form. It's just hard to represent on LinkedIn how many bounces I did. Typically, I found that most jobs that I had, it was a very large company, but I landed very quickly in one program that was wonderful. It was the P8 Poseidon program, which we actually sell to the Australian Air Force. So it's a great program.
What is it about?
They're sold to the Air Force and they are surveillance aircraft to protect the waters and look for submarine. So I landed on this program, which was P8, and it was my home for all those 9 years. But inside any big program in a major corporation, you have a lot of opportunity to move and bounce and flex. There were 600 or so engineers in there. So I did my work as a structural engineer, which is what I was hired into. But within 6 months, I went to loads to learn about the upstream work, what happens technically before we get all these loads, which we use for the analysis. So it was very much a technical stretch to go learn more about why we do what we do technically. And then after I finished that rotation, I went back to working really hard where I was. And then I got a leadership role, just leading peers, doing a little bit of project management while executing work. So that was great. And then I got a chance to go work with the mission systems team to go coordinate with the delivery test flight line and do all this liaison work. And so that was a leadership growth again, but in a new technical domain. So that one, that you remember in my book, sometimes you do a double jump, you go up and over at the same time, but it was still in my home organization. So I had a lot of network support and I felt really protected, which was a great way to learn and grow. And so, yeah, I just kept doing, it was about every 12 to 16, 18 months where I would do a bounce, where I would go have that conversation with the manager and be like, I'm ready to go figure out the next move. Let's figure out. And the managers were always super supportive because I wasn't saying, I'm going to go leave. It was, I want to keep progressing in this program with you, same product, but I'm going to grow. And it was really great.
Yes, even for them, they could see the stretch one at a time. You didn't give them a stretch and they were like, oh, okay, this is going to be a big thing. Okay, there's several things that I want to bounce back on this one. And one thing that you said, you talked about the support network. So when you did that bounce, that is technical and leadership at the same thing, but within a program that you knew, you said you had support network. And I want to explore a little bit that as a career advice, because I think that when we take opportunities or when we look at opportunity, we often look at, this is going to bring me more financial advantage, this is going to give me more learning, etc., etc. But we don't per se look at it in the context of our support network. I think what you were explaining in your book is that if you got support network both outside in the home and inside the workplace, then you can do bigger jump in a better way. So can you tell me a little bit more how it played out for you and what you meant by all this?
Absolutely. A support network is that safety net. It's that community that you build. I hate how I was taught networking back in the day where people are like, networking means being able to climb quicker, or networking means meeting the vice president's happy hour. And it just felt so unauthentic and wrong. But fortunately, somehow I just bounced around in the dark and figured out like, hey, this person is really a great mentor. I should talk to them more. And this person, I can teach things to. I should talk to them more. And so we just, as a community on my program, built this organic, natural support of mentors, mentees, peer relationships. And when you have that sort of trust, and it's not to go get something else, it's not for your own self-interest, it's just to support others, then when you take a leap and you go push yourself and you fail, you don't fall because other people are there cheering for you, they're advocating for you, they're helping pick you up. Maybe you fail because you went totally the wrong direction and you're in the wrong spot. And they'll say, "That's okay. I know that you were great over here. Come on back." And a lot of times I've seen people take leaps where they're like, "No, I'm just going to go to this other company or to this other division," or like it doesn't even have to be external, but sometimes you just do these leaps because they look pretty on your resume or they have a great ego boosting salary or title. But I love having that comfort and that support with me. And also to offer that to other people, it just makes it feel much more worthwhile to go to work every day when you have that going for you.
Yeah, and I guess it's not as overwhelming when you start something that
Yes.
really stretches you. So you were talking about failure. Did you get in that both dimension stretch somewhere where you were like, "Oh, this isn't working for me," or?
Yeah. So we're going to get personal here. I did a stretch. I did a jump. I moved from my engineering, aerospace engineering world to systems engineer, which was integrating a massive platform, a 747 platform. It was a big job. It was the first time I had managers working for me. It was outside my skill set technically, but I had really smart people under me where we could figure it out. At the same time, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer and she had a surgery.
Sorry to hear.
Things didn't work and I had to be home more and I had to support my family more. And it meant a lot of driving, and a lot of time away from my family, time away from work to be with my parents. And that was the right choice, absolutely the right choice. But it meant I was already so stretched at work. I was trying to learn technical and leadership at the same time, and I fell.
Hmm. Yeah, that would have been a big, big things. And also, when someone so big happen at home, I wonder how much you can think straight.
Exactly. You think you're thinking straight, and then on hindsight, you're like, oh no, I wasn't thinking straight.
No, I mean, who could, right? It's just, especially a parent, a child, someone so close. You're gonna get brain fog and things. Perspective changes. It's gonna become hard to prioritize a project when no one is dying around you in the project. If you're a neurosurgeon, perhaps it changes your perspective too. But in our jobs,
Yeah.
So I'm really sorry to hear.
Thank you.
It's one of the things that life happens, right? And we want to talk about
Mhm.
it when people are comfortable too, of course. But it's to say anyone listening here that hardship happen and we've got to be ready for it. So what I'd like you to tell me, if you're happy with, is once you do the double jump and something so hard happened to you at home and it just doesn't work out, how do you bounce back? What happened then?
Once I realized I needed to bounce, and it took a minute, like you said, the fog was there. But once I knew I'd overstretched and it was time to return to my root, I lit up my network. And that's why we have networks. It's not to climb, it's not to go become the CEO when you're 22. It's to have the support when you need it. So I called my favorite mentor in Everett and I called my favorite mentor in Washington, D.C. I called the people that I trusted and I said, I need help. And they helped me.
How did they help you?
They found me a job. They found a couple of jobs, which I'm so grateful for. They were so supportive, looking for opportunities. One of them set me up with conversations with a whole bunch of executives in my technical skill set. So going back to my roots of structural and analysis. And then ultimately a former manager of mine said, you know what, just come work for me. We'll figure out your job later. And I did. And it was so good.
So still at Boeing or another company?
Still going. Yeah.
Awesome. So we've been stretching too much, and that's okay. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work, but you'll find a way, which is the take home message, really. So we can be audacious even if it doesn't work out. So I love that. And that you can bounce back. So that's great. And so now we've done a little bit of your career at Boeing. But after 16 years, what triggered you to leave a stable job and probably very well paid at that point and quite unique to do your own thing. What was the thought process? What started to miss? Or did you perhaps see a gap somewhere that you felt, you know what, someone needs to do something about it, and I think I'm the right person to do this?
I think it was a combination of several things. One thing was I was putting a lot of time in. I mean, 40 hours a week is a lot of time to invest your blood, sweat, and tears to make things work. And I was getting to the point where I was realizing I wasn't putting the work directly towards my passion. I wanted to make big movements in supporting and developing early leaders. I wanted to make big movements on women in STEM, and more importantly for me personally, it was mothers in STEM, because I feel like there's not a narrative in STEM right now. So I wanted to get involved in that conversation, and I had opportunities to maintain my current workload and mentor people and go to some conferences. I did get to speak at the Sweden National Conference in 2020. So there were great opportunities to make a dent, but the job was getting in the way. So I had to take a leap. That was one of the factors. Another factor was my mom passed away at 62. Life is really fleeting and short, so I wanted to go do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, a big shake-up, a big shake-up. So you said your passion was, you started to move away from the technical passion after many years, which is 16 years, a good chunk in technical fields. And you were more passionate about leadership and mother in STEM. Now, I just want to dig a little bit more about the mother thing, because obviously we talked about being one woman of over 40 men, and you have 2 children.
I do.
Yeah, so you probably had them while you were at Boeing. And so how did the pregnancy talk go?
As you would expect. I was so scared to bring up the fact that I was pregnant, and it took me a long time to let my boss know that I was pregnant. And he handled it so wonderfully. He said, "Congratulations. This is wonderful news for you." He handled it exactly how he should. And then he let me know I was his very first employee that had ever been pregnant. He dealt with a lot of men who needed 2 weeks off to go hang out with their wives while they watched the baby, but he had never dealt with maternity leave and all the things that go with, like, where's the mother's room? He didn't know if the building had a mother's room. So it's just so many layers that he was great. He partnered with me. He brought in HR, but it definitely made me feel a little like an alien. So
Yeah, first employee pregnant for a manager who was, I suppose, very experienced.
he had about 25 years in management.
So as you said, there isn't a big narrative for women in science. So even though we are nurtured to think that we can do anything, didn't reality hit at some point? But in your case, it didn't impact your career opportunities though, did it?
No, it didn't hold me back, which is wonderful. Here in America, maternity leave is pretty short, but I took an extended leave, quite a bit of time unpaid. So I got 4.5 months off, which was a lot in my world.
Yeah, so Australia get more or less 3 months paid, depending on your company, but then many, many mother culturally take a year.
Yeah. So yeah, as someone who only took 4 months, 4.5 months, that really didn't really skip a beat with where the progress was in the program, where the teams were. And I actually, because I was quite proactive and I'm not afraid to tell my boss what I want, because I feel like that helps them. I told them, like, I want to switch when I come back to leadership, or I want the second time I came back, my previous job, I had been a leader of a team at that point, and that had to get filled because it did 4 months. And so they was like, well, what do you want to do? And they laid out options, and we invented a new job of a flight test support person. And so I got a new crazy opportunity.
What's that?
I created a job where it was called delivery captain. And so it was the go-to for integrating with the engineers to the flight line people and making sure that they actually could speak the same language. So I was actually building my communication skills there, and like, you need to actually call so-and-so. And someone called me the Facebook of the building because I played the, hey, do you know so-and-so?
I call that a knowledge broker.
Oh, I like that.
And it's really good that you got a role for that, because often knowledge broker exist organically and they're not really acknowledged for it, because things go well when they are around, And when they leave, they might be something break down because this knowledge doesn't go around. But no one is really able to think, oh, this is because that person was doing that. Because it's kind of like an act, but the impact is there. So I love that you actually got a role that was acknowledging, this important a knowledge breaker, a translator between technical functional leads and things like that, because that's really important.
Yeah, I like how you labeled that, because if you don't put a label on it, the role has no value. And so by adding that name and creating a space, it becomes something people look for. It becomes a skill.
Yeah, so let's advertise it, people. Knowledge broker. There we go. Okay, so then big trigger, family big trigger, and a little bit of development of passion for leadership and wanting to put a better environment for mother in science was what drove you to leave the job. So how did you do that? So you said, okay, I'm leaving my job and I'm starting from scratch. Did you write the book while you were working at Boeing, or how did you do that transition?
Very systematically. Because I'm an engineer. So I gave my boss a 6 months heads up that I was going to be leaving. At that point, I was a senior leader over a pretty large organization. I built this team. We had 6 engineers. I'd hired a whole leadership team underneath me, and I really cared about the team. And so I didn't want to just kind of drop and go, because I put a lot of work into creating a positive culture. And so I gave him 6 months. I gave him lots of time to find a backfill. I onboarded the backfill. And then at the same time, in the background, I started doing a little bit of research on what is a small business. Started writing my sticky notes, outlining the book. So it was very just kind of baby step methodical. And I had, in the end, probably too much time to the transition in hindsight, but I created a lot of space for the slow exit.
So your first step was after this transition or during this transition, writing the book, right? Or you started coaching people already?
I was coaching pretty much right away because I was doing a certificate, getting certified as an executive coach. I started that the day after I left. So I got my certification 8 weeks later. So I got to start coaching and getting that momentum going, and then writing in the background. So it all kind of happened at once.
Yeah, so there's no chicken or egg. It's like both of them at the same time.
Yes.
And your first client to be coaching, it was already right away there because you already had clients around you wanted to that, which was the driver for starting it. You saw there was a need already when you starting thinking about coaching, which is what really drove you, or?
At the very beginning, I did it all pro bono. So it was all just, I'm offering to continue mentoring relationships or meeting with new people, but I need to build this skill as a coach. And so I didn't want to charge anyone for quite some time. Okay. So the first clients were kind of continued relationships that were a great chance for me to practice in a safe space again, back to that community support.
Right. Okay, so first step, we coaching for free. We trying to find a method that works and your authentic style, I suppose. Then you've also bridged the gap with having formal certifications. You know anything about business at that point?
Define know anything.
How about we do a little, when you do your business, or they tell you need to do a business plan, whether it's on the back of the napkin or a 50, page document, whichever your style is. I've heard for many years, actually do not need a 50-page document. I guess depends if you've been on a tech company or coaching business, but still there are some very important things that we need to have. So can you give me the pitch? Where were you thinking when you kind of build that business plan in your head? What was the exact service and what was your persona? That target person, if you had to describe that persona, who was that?
At the very beginning, my mentality going in was, I'll figure it out when I need to figure it out. So it was very much a just-in-time business plan. But I should have probably mentioned this before, during the pandemic, I got a yoga certification. So I'm a certified yoga teacher.
Why not?
Why not? That was pretty exciting.
I love it. I mean, that pandemic really gave people new inspiration.
It really did. So that's just the whole new eye-opening, just reset button. It was fun.
Look, I do acknowledge that people died, and it's been very hard for lots of business, economy, government. So I don't want to undermine the pandemic, but it did really give a new paradigm of people thinking about work
Absolutely.
and about life.
Oh,
So
yeah. I don't mean to undercut it in any way. It was very challenging. Mental health took a huge toll. And I got a yoga certificate for failure in it.
some good breathing, I suppose.
Exactly. We needed some breathing with 2 kids at home. Oh my goodness.
So how did that come into the puzzle?
I was actually kind of confused on where I wanted to go because I could do yoga classes online, make a virtual platform. Everyone was doing great on Instagram. It just kind of seemed like a fun way to go play with the business. And so at the very beginning, I was a little lost because I had no practice in developing who the target customer was, what my actual product was. I I know that strong working technical moms could use some breathing and stretching, also could use some coaching. So I started narrowing in pretty quickly on I'm really interested in the mid-career working parents. I'm not specifically only even for moms because I care really much about the whole culture of working parents and that dynamic and all the balance everyone plays. But as I progressed, I realized yoga market is saturated. That's not the world I want to play in. I'm just going to do that one for me. And then I really got a lot more sharp on why coaching, who it's for, and what I want to do with it.
So did you start advertising? Did you go to events? How did you start bringing awareness and build portfolio?
I use the website development as kind of my outline, my tool to start framing my own message and understand what I wanted to share broadly. Joined a board of a great nonprofit called Mothers in Science, and they are connecting people all around the world. One of the members who I work with closely is in Australia. Hi, Belinda. And so that gave me a great just awareness of all the other voices that are in this space. Because when I was in my corporate career, I could see inside the corporate space, and I had no idea how much great work was already being done on all the different layers of girls in STEM, mothers in STEM. Like there is work already in motion, but now I get to be part of it. So yeah, those were all the steps to starting to get connected into the sticker world.
And so on the writing the book, did you continue to use things that you were getting from the ground, from the coaching bits and from starting to interact with all the different body to write the book? Or were you already really advanced for the book? Because we have to talk about both at the same time because they happen at the same time. So I can't do one chapter. And then so take me through because that's really a interlinked thought process.
It really is. The core principles in the book, the 5 chapter layout is a really methodical structure that I had over a year ago. That framework which I'm actually now starting to put things together just on what the framework is, kind of the bones of the book, the how to prioritize, how to mentor, how to celebrate your skills. All of those pieces, those are from my past. Those are from my corporate life and all my learnings. How I threaded it in the narrative and how I started asking reflective questions in the book and locking in people's learning. Those pieces of the teaching I learned from the coaching. So it's an interesting double mix.
Yeah, so in your book, we're having a bit an introduction on working parents in science, finding your own skill, making your own Venn diagram, really like the Venn diagram of yourself. That was great. Create change and master today, and then grow diversity. And so quite a round-up book. And I love that there's a lot of coaching book out there. So I don't know how you differentiate yourself, but when I read it, I thought it's a little bit of a saturated space, but then everyone writing gives a different perspective. That always amazes me on how different things can resonate with different people and why it doesn't matter that there are already 10 other books out there because your book is going to resonate in a different way. And yours is very particular because you write it from a very scientific perspective. So, for example, listen to your gut and all this like that. I hadn't heard it all before. And I always found it difficult. I was like, I don't listen to my gut. Like, give me a spreadsheet, you know? But you put it in different ways, right? And you make it a little bit more kind of like systematic. And even though it's going to be the same thing, as in the end result is to try to understand how your body reacts to certain things that you want to do. And if your body is really telling you, oh, this is not for me, it just made a difference for me to do that exercise. And instead of being on a block and think, how am I listening to my body? It really allowed the exercise to happen. So I found it was quite fascinating to see that, and how, yeah, your perspective, your very systematic engineering perspective with all the graph and the systematic steps were very helpful in taking this reflective step. So that's it. So for anyone that is listening who has read our book and thinking, I don't know how to go for all this exercise, this one for scientific people is really helping. And you just take that as your homework and it works for us.
That's wonderful feedback. Yeah, I agree. I've read so many business books, and there really is nothing rocket science, anything in the books. I mean, it's practical. I can see that.
I feel you can say it.
I studied rocket science. I know. But the narrative that I try to wrap around it is that we always hear these things like just lean in and do work, or just do this. But remembering that you have, I mean, I worked really hard to develop my life. Had to get my husband here on a green card. Took years to get pregnant. Like, we've done a lot of stuff to create this amazing life we have. I don't want a book that tells me just how to get advanced executives. I want stories that talk about how to create a whole life with professional success, but not abandoning all the rest of things. And I don't feel like that shows up very much in the narratives in most business books.
Yeah, that's right. And also, the five-year plan, which I hate this exercise, but on your perspective, it's a little bit different, because first thing, you take it from a holistic place, so including personal goals on there. And then I like that you have 3 different speeds to go through it. So one is like, okay, you're going to take it steady, and perhaps it's not 5 years, but 10 years to get there. And then one that goes a little bit crazy on, well, what if you go all in some goals, and how fast can you go, right? And it just acknowledged that not everything has the same priority, and you've got to accelerate one bit while leaning on another. So yeah, very, very integrative on business within a real person life. So which is quite important, you might say.
I think so.
Love the YOLO board. You live on one's board. We're trying to build ours at home now. So.
They're so great. And that is one thing that I think I had a midlife crisis at 35 years old. And I actually just made it one New Year's Eve for real. And so many of my friends have picked up the YOLO boards. So they're writing out the goals for the year. I see them everywhere now. My sisters all had them. And I was like, we might be onto something here. I had to put it in the book.
Suddenly you put those kind of like mini dreams or big dreams, because both have their place there. And you just keep front, mind, and center. So it kind of nudges you every day rather than, losing sight. Because we're busy. We're not thinking about how we're going to organize living 3 months in Europe in 2 years. You know what I mean? We didn't think about it. But suddenly it's there. And you're thinking, oh, well, if I make that choice or make that network there, then it's going to be easier at that point, right? So it's building blocks and front, mind, and center. So I actually found it quite useful.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I'm so glad it resonated with you.
So great book. So how long does it take you to write the book?
The first glimmer of the book was when I was flying home from that Society of Women Engineers conference I did in 2020. So that was way before. That was 2.5 years before the book actually published. So it started kind of playing in the back of my mind. But from the time that I actually went from Post-it notes to starting to type, 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months. Pretty good.
And then 6 months of editing and cleaning up and correcting all my engineering spelling. And then we had a book.
Did you need to have an editor, or was it a one-woman show?
I have wonderful sisters who both have English majors. So they helped me with the editing and how many times I use a semicolon wrong.
And publishing, because publishing can be very hard, right? We've had other author on the podcast, and there's always 2 options. You find someone who publish for you, or you publish yourself. What was your rationale?
I went for self-publishing, partly because I love learning, and I didn't want to give up the opportunity to get to spend a lot of time just learning what in the world happens in publishing. One of my goals long-term is to find ways to lift up other people's voices, because I get bored of hearing my own voice. So if I've learned how to do the publishing myself, maybe that facilitates me helping other people in the future.
Yes, so that's why at the end of your book, you actually created ELMM Publishing,
Did.
Yeah, I've did the homework. I was curious about that because you say we know that representation matters and we want to publish other books for other people, whether it is on character of underrepresented group, mentoring or partnering. So you actually have this ambition on top of being an author and a coach, business owner, you actually want to start publishing other people's work.
Yeah, I'm very interested in celebrating those other voices. And I think there's so many different voices. It's not just the mothers in STEM like I'm celebrating in my book, but like the LGBTQ community in science and math and engineering and technology has such a little presentation right now. That's one area where we could do a lot more to lift up voices, but also people of color, the BIPOC community. There's just engineering, which is my experience, but I hear similar for all of STEM fields, is not diverse. And there's so much research showing how innovation and progress and great decisions come from diverse voices all being listened to. So I want to be part of that change.
Great. So we're going to have three stream really, publishing yourself, publishing others, and coaching. Now, just a bit of the financial aspect of all this. So you leave a job with a full-time pay to write a book and coach people. How did that work financially? And how long until you can actually make up for what you used to be in corporate?
Oh, I'll never make what I used to make in corporate. That's kind of just had to let that go. I am still in the scaling phase, and that's okay because I saved and I have a nest egg and I lived below my means intentionally for many years because I always wanted to retire before 50 and then before 48 and then before 42. And the number kept dropping. So I've saved hard, which gives me that freedom to go. And when I was ready to jump, go and play.
Right. Okay. So, and you saying I have to let go that I'll never make what in corporate. Was that a family decision or was it an easy decision?
It's a decision that comes with guilt because everything comes with guilt when you're a mom. It was a family decision. My husband is working on a sustainability project that he's super passionate about, and he sees a path that he really wants to stay with for years in making an impact there. And that comes with a stable income. So that gave me more space to not burden the family by walking away from my paycheck.
And are there sacrifices that come with that? Did you have any detractor that says, Cassie, this isn't a good idea. Just stay where you are?
No, surprisingly, the fact that so much support, it's amazing. Even with people inside the company, it was very supportive when I was leaving. People are sad I was going, but happy for the choices I was making. The biggest, I think, drawback that I've been working through with my own executive coach has been transitioning my mindset from valuing what I do based on a paycheck. And I have to find new ways to value the contribution that I'm making in the world.
And what is this new way for you?
I have wrote it down on a big sticky note. I like sticky notes. Connections. I just, for now, for this year, my metric, the way I measure success is, am I connecting with people? Am I making new friendships and new business partnerships and getting new clients? And it's just that how am I connecting out in the world?
Right. So we're going to write your new mission. You know how you need to write a purpose and a mission for your business?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have it written already or are we in the process?
I wrote it and it was terrible.
Hit me.
Oh, I can't remember what it says now, but it's something about elevating the voices of women and moms in STEM. But really the mission is getting the message out that we exist and that we are not going to sacrifice what's important to us to get to where people think we should get in our careers, but doing what we, each person individually, finds is their version of success.
Good.
Their version of success.
Good. Well, on our way. Anyway, that's a statement that needs refining as you grow, right? Because it's a new business for you.
Yeah. So the business started in January, so I haven't had our birthday yet.
Well, I'm looking forward to publishing even more work. Can you tell me what's in the name ELMM?
There is all sorts of drama picking the name for the company, but I personally identify with engineer, leader, mom, mentor. So that's ELMM. And so it's defining me. And then I love the visual of the tree and having that kind of the roots. You have the foundation, you have the solid trunk, and then you can go wherever you want from there. Some trees go crazy.
Right. I like it. I love acronyms. Don't we all love acronym?
We're technical people. That's all we do.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So engineer, leader, mother, and mentor consulting. That's fantastic. So a little bit more technical on those things. So you create your business. You let go of the idea that you're going to make your corporate income within 2 to 3 years. And perhaps you will, but that's you've let go of that pressure. You have three kind of stream where you're going to publish more people's work, your own book, and your coaching, as well as public speaking.
Yes.
You needed a website, you needed a logo, you needed to publish. How did you bridge all that? Did you hire people or did you just go and learn every single bit yourself?
I would do a lot of learning and a lot of asking questions. So again, building that support community. When I took that class on executive coaching, we were in a community of, I think there were 8 of us. It was small and tight knit, and we met every week. But I started figuring out that every single person in the call either had a business or was launching a business. And so we started just bouncing ideas off each other. And some person figured out this, another person figured out that. And so done a lot of learning through peers and then a lot of digging in, trying to figure it out myself, which sometimes takes a lot longer.
Well, that's always the question. Do you outsource or do you do it yourself? And when you are starting a business, usually the funds aren't there. So so it's always kind of a big question, right? But if you are a good learner, I think that can help. If you don't get frustrated with not knowing straight away.
It goes back to my just in time. Like I'll figure it out when I need to figure it out and it'll probably work.
Yeah, just in time. And another question that can be very difficult for first business starters is this question about the first pricing point. So how did you define your first pricing point? Did you look at other coaches? Did you look at what people could pay for and what they should pay for such a service? Did you look at how much you needed them to pay for it to be viable for you? What was the rationale for defining the first pricing point?
That's a great question. This is one that I actually struggled with for quite some time because I've never taken money from people before. In a corporation, you just have to do your work and someone gives you a paycheck. So I had to get over that barrier of actually having specific people value my time. And so working through that was an interesting challenge. But once I got through that, I went to a class. I did take a class on this one. The theory was, what is the lowest number you can possibly charge where you won't resent people when you have to give your time to that service? And then if the highest number you think people will pay is higher than that, then you probably are in a sweet spot. Because I really want to support not like the C-suite. I didn't go across compare my prices to executive coaching programs where it's all about having the corporation pay someone. Most of my clients do come and pay from their own pocket. So I went with that very bottom, like this is where we can meet. And I'm not trying to gouge anyone. I'm just really trying to open up the space for conversation and still be able to eat.
I like this idea of thinking what is the price that you won't resent people to giving your time to. So yeah, that's a good one. I've never heard about it. Okay, cool.
It kind of sounds negative to say there's a point where I would resent people, but
Yeah, but there is, at some point we also have a life to maintain and
yeah, we have value in ourselves.
Exactly. Right. So we've talked about what play to your strengths. What did play to your weakness?
Marketing is really hard. Coming from engineering, coming from leadership, like I have the project management skills, and you've already noted that I'm very methodical. But the sales, the marketing, the putting yourself out there in ways where you're creating conversation, that's not something you learn in a corporation because corporations grow with and you stay with. And so I've had to do a lot of research. I have hired a partner for doing some reviews of my marketing material, some reviews of my website. So I'm really thankful for her. That is the hardest piece for me, is putting my voice out there in a way where I feel like I'm still authentic, but I'm also connecting and creating sales and creating forward momentum.
Marketing and sales is really hard, that's for sure. So your website, did you do it yourself or did you get someone to do it?
I did it myself and then I did it myself again. And then the third time I like it. I spent too much time on that. But yeah, I think we've got to the point where the first time I did it, it was very me, but not clean. The second time I did it, I tried to go super, super clean, super, super professional, and I didn't see me in it anymore. So now I've gone back and I found
Mm.
professional, but with my voice and my like who I am in there.
Yeah, but you did it yourself. And there are so many great tools to do it, WordPress and alike. And some of them are free, some of them are very cheap, but it does take some learning too. And there are some limitations in the layout and things that you can do. So it is part of your marketing, so it's quite important. Although, I know other business started who is using Linktree, which is very, very simple as a landing page. And I guess it's always a little bit of a balance of where you are and what you need at that particular point. We talked with Natalie Chapman, who also started her business from scratch. And when she started, she thought that this website was really her front door. And she was also mentioning how it can be hard as a new business to convince people that you're not wasting their money just because you don't have a shiny front door and a beautiful website and things like that. So in her case, she chose to have professional developer doing this. It is definitely true that the website is a front door and it can be a bit daunting to do it yourself. But I think if you can do something simple, plain, and as you said, that looks like you, then that might be just enough to start. And wherever you are later, you might update it, of course. So nothing is very definitive.
I also took a little weird leap when I joined that board for Mothers in Science. Everyone has to be on a team that provides volunteer work. And so I chose to be the web developer for the program. And that gives me the space to get a lot of hands-on practice doing web development. And then there is a marketing specialist there who kind of teaches me what I'm missing. And it's a great way to volunteer and learn at the same time. And then I've taken that back.
Right. So you kind of really, again, back to the support network, join places where not only you could add value, but also we get skills out of it and put you into the right environment and also in the right sector. So that's a very interesting approach. And look, I can see you doing it spontaneously and very genuinely. But I certainly appreciate saying smart strategic decisions. We need to see more of this when starting our own business. Combining adding value to others in ways that can also help you build skills and network and be in the right place. I mean, it's a really win-win situation because you get guidance from a marketer, space to practice the web development, which you didn't have much idea when you started, but certainly still add the value because it provides the output of that web development for this organization. I also really like that once you leave out of corporate and make time for your own business, you actually also make time for a lot of other things, like helping other organizations, like Mother in Science in your case. So that's also good advice that I take from what you're saying. Look for where you can add the most value, but that you would develop skills that you need and contact that can also nurture you.
But yes, you make me sound so targeted and calculating. I do think spend your energy where it's going to be most useful for you. Like I volunteer at school, but I volunteer in my kids' classroom working on engineering projects. Like I find things that I find joy and I give joy to other people. And it is targeted, but I don't want it to sound negative and calculating.
Let's address that. Targeted doesn't mean negative or inauthentic, but the reality is you've got hundreds of options to use your time. And there's no right or wrong, as in depends on what you want to do. But targeted means that you pick options that are going to make sense, where you can add the most things. And Natalie Chapman, the founder of Gem Maker, said exactly the same thing. When I volunteer at school, I don't make cookies. I write grants. Because anyone can make cookies, that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with making cookies. But I can also write grants. And so that gives the school something that is more difficult to get. And that plays to my strength. And that gave me the practice. So I really want to address the fact that targeted doesn't have to be ungenuine. And the reason I insist in it is that as scientists, we have these very big stereotypes about sales, about marketing, about putting ourselves out there. And all of this is perceived negatively. And I do believe, I come to the realization that holds us back so much. So we've got to get beyond that and find the right pinpoint.
I love that. I absolutely agree. And I feel like you're shining a light on that. Why we still have the negative self-talk and we still have that perception that we're so careful on because like the words can go from leadership to bossy or targeted to manipulative. I'm always watching. So I wonder if that's a systemic thing that's grown up from my past.
Exactly. Yeah. So and every scientist and multiple hats is about STEM professional who have gone off script and do their own things. And so that's why I want to address it because we all have this inbuilt myth and I'm trying to bust it day in, day out. So for myself and for everybody else. So I heard it in you and I've heard it so many times before. So let's move on beyond that and shine where it needs to shine. So
Well, keep it up. Thank you.
So is there anything that you think has held you back or perhaps something that has propelled you forward? Whether it is people or systemic barrier, anything that you can reflect on your journey so far?
Just going back on our conversation from a second ago and those whole perceptions, either that we have of ourselves or the perceptions people have of us. I found when I became a mother and I was doing the daycare drop off and the daycare pickup, and sometimes I would get the call that the kid is sick, the normal call that when you start kindergarten comes every 4 days. This gets kind of hard, but I, I don't know if it was my perception that was holding me back or the perception of people around me was real. And then I was just feeling that and observing it. But I've had to struggle a little bit with knowing if me being physically present and physically able to make every meeting and physically butts and seat, for crude lack of another word, if that was more important than the performance. Because I knew I was doing a performance. I knew I was putting out great engineering or leading a fantastic team. Once I switched to management, which was about the same time that I had my second kid, I had great feedback from all my employees. And yet I still had this fear, this concern that because I wasn't there 50, 60 hours a week, like some of the other managers in the building, was I being held back or was I being considered less than? And so that was something I had to work through for a lot of years. And in the end, I don't know if I just got irreverent or if it was just confidence, but I really let my performance shine for me and didn't worry so much about time on station, for an aerospace term.
Mm, I see. And I guess this is why in your book you say about role modeling for managers and blocking calendar for your kids and your personal things and putting your boundary in a visible space so that it sends the message to your employee that they can too. So yeah, I mean, I do resonate with that because obviously when you're younger, you do a lot of hours of being more focused on performance and results rather than what we call presenteeism,
Yeah.
which is just being there. Perhaps it's not because you're there that you're doing work anyway. So it can be like blank zone anyway. So definitely, and I love what you say, about being vocal. But then I was reading yesterday that 90% of the managers worries that the employee who works remotely are doing random stuff. And there's even remote spying on your employee that you can do if they have accepted to, and every country is going to have a different legislation around it. But that worries me, that managers are worried about the employee performance based on hours spent on their computer. Because if they want to watch Minecraft or hot potato singings at some point of the day, because that's what they need to get their brain working.
Exactly. Who cares? I think managers will get a lot more done if they focus on performance. And if you assign them to do work, then they get the best quality work back in a timely manner. And if you did, great. Like that's what you were paying them to do. The concern for the way that business and industry has always worked was you show up at 9, you leave at 5, and that was the metric, similar to my metric of getting paid was my value. But if you can let go of that a little bit and look at what actually matters, which is getting the task done, getting maybe even more than the task done, like are they also mentoring people? Are they collaborating? Are they engaged in the interesting conversations? Then let them watch Minecraft. That's my theory.
And understand that people get energy from different things. but you need to feed that energy flow to be able to output the right performance, right? So how you feel this energy flow is going to be different for anyone. So when we micromanage, micro look at hours, we undermine that. And also, I don't know if everyone is the same, but if you treat me as a toddler, I'll act as a toddler.
Absolutely.
If you leave me alone, then I'll act like a perfectly functioning adult.
Wait, are you saying that when you hire perfectly functioning adults and you want to find someone who's proactive and a leader, you have to treat them like that?
Exactly right. That sounds fun, right? But you see that a lot. So anyway, that's a story for another time. So we're talking a lot about work-life balance, and I guess that's something that is really important with new parents, because suddenly you can't just organize life around yourself, but you have to organize it around yourself and your family. Do you have any different perspective on what work-life balance is? Is it a dirty word, or is it actually a thing that we should be looking at?
I think a lot of people think of it as a dirty word because it's thrown at us. You should be balanced. Why aren't you balanced? But when you use it for yourself and you define what balance means and where you want to be on that teeter-totter or swing set or whatever analogy you enjoy, that when you can start getting a healthy perspective. Because if you're trying to imagine this like perfect beam and you're standing in the middle and work is this weight and life is the exact same weight and like science scales, you're never going to get there. But when you have an understanding of, I want to spend a lot of time with my kids. This is my personal understanding. Everyone's understanding is obviously different, but I want to spend a lot of time with my kids. I don't need to tell other people they need to spend a lot of time with their kids to feel their balance. I want to go and learn a lot of things. Maybe someone else wants to go pay someone to do their marketing. And we just need to let people play in that space. Find you're happy. That's all it is. And just stop comparing where you put priorities in your life to where other people put priorities in their life.
And I guess, life can't always be 50-50. There's ups and downs everywhere. For me, for example, I've decided that, until my kids were going to school and while they are at this age where they really want to be with you, I want it to be part-time, and then I'll change my dynamic from that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's been working for me, and I don't feel the guilt because I know I've taken all those amazing adventures every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And by Monday, we're all tired and we just want to get on with daycare and work. So just last question. Do you have a threshold on when you're going to have to go back to corporate?
I will not go back to corporate.
Okay. So there is, I want to go with plan B, and plan B is going to be the way. There's no plan C.
The plan C is really plan B. We're going to make this work, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
Great. Yeah. And it's good to know. It's also an option to think about that. So that's great. So, Cassie, now that we've done all this recounting of this journey and that you're in the thick of it, do you have a book that inspires you and a song that motivates you?
I do. Fast Girls by Elise Cooper. It's a fiction book based on historical facts of the 1936 Olympics. And it's just so much fun to see. I'm an athlete, but different narratives of women in history who did amazing things, who came from so many different backgrounds. And I read that, I realized when I was doing research for this right before I quit. And I wonder if that might have been a catalyst for why I wanted to do ELMM Press and get the voices out there.
And look, you're going to start reading the signs once you're looking for them. I think that's part of it. So you recognize that book as a sign because you were looking for encouragement. And the song?
My alarm every morning is the song Carry On by Sun. It's just got a great introduction melody, but it's a good reminder every day to just get going. And
Momentum.
That
was Cassie Leonard, the founder of ELMM Consulting and Publishing. Cassie saved up to buy herself freedom to follow her own mind, and after 16 years at Boeing, building a strong technical career and establishing herself as a senior leader in the company, she was ready to take her leap and start her own thing, both developing early leaders who also navigate parenthood, but also voicing other minority in STEM. And STEM is not diverse, let's face it, and it hurts the end user, aka us, that everything is designed by one dominant profile. Every founder is cultivating a growth mindset, but Cassie really excels in the learning part and the systematic execution. She published one book and intends to reuse all the learning about publishing to provide a platform and publish the work of other undervoiced group. So if you have a message to share, why not team up with Cassie? I take really many great lessons from Cassie, but one of the greatest I think is about the support network and how if you can build your village, then you can try about anything because you will have a safety net. If you fall, if you miss, they will catch you. And networking is a great way to do that if you can continue to nurture your relationships by paying it forward. Don't think about networking as a way to climb the ladder, but as a way to build your village. Look at Cassie, she even got to invent a new role after falling once. Quite a great landing. The other recurrent theme is that marketing really feels hard, especially for technical people who tend to look at hardwired value, where marketing just seems like fairy tales. But for STEM people, we do need to learn the hard way that communication, branding is absolutely necessary, not a nice have. And there are ways to do it with authenticity. It doesn't have to feel fake and ungenuine, not just very floss. So, tell me, who is in your safety net? And what is a community you could join where you could nurture other people and build this village of yours? Hey, thanks for listening. If you like the show, share it. Tune in for monthly episodes. You can follow Multiple Hats, visit my website, that's angeliquegreco.com.au, or follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Just search for Angelique Greco. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to tell me about your story, leave me a message.